wanting to freeze the, to freeze the, to freeze the, to freeze the. You have my commitment, you have my word, and together on June 24th, we're gonna win this race so that next year we freeze
Freeze
the
rent.
rent.
That chant wasn't just a campaign slogan. It's the exact reason why Zohran Mamdani was elected mayor of New York City. He built his entire platform on a promise to freeze the rent, and now that he's in office, he's actively pushing to implement it.
Get raised, and why? Well, here's what you should know. Here in New York City, we have something called the Rent Guidelines Board. It's how rents get decided for more than 2 million.
And to convince New Yorkers that the city's housing economy can actually survive that massive policy shift, the mayor recently released a video explaining the Rent Guideline Board's process using Monopoly, the board game. Now, I hate Monopoly. It's not a family-friendly game. It's a brutal lesson in capitalism disguised as a game that ruins relationships. My 5-year-old understands the rules, but he hasn't played it through to the point where I take all of his properties, his little houses, and his colorful money, leaving him destitute and empty inside. Because of this, he still occasionally asks me to play, but this time, I decided to show him the true meaning of economic devastation so that I can once and for all rid of us of this game. And at the same time, also see how the new administration is framing this.
This board, it's not a game.
Mayor Mamdani is absolutely right here. It's not a game. But when you care about how neighborhoods are actually built and sustained over time, the political narrative we're hearing right now feels like people are playing games.
Which showed that buildings with rent-stabilized apartments saw their revenue increase by more than 6% last year.
Politicians are loudly claiming that landlords' profits, specifically net operating income, jumped by 6.2% last year. It sounds like a massive windfall. But when politicians use the word profit here, they're ignoring the single most expensive line item on a building's balance sheet, the mortgage. Net operating income is just the cash left over before you pay your debt service. And over the last few years, interest rates have fundamentally changed the reality of owning a physical building. Mortgages that were locked in at 3.5% are now refinancing at 6.5% or 7%. If your building's NOI bumps up by 6%, but the cost to service your debt literally doubles, your actual cash flow is wiped out. Claiming the industry is thriving while ignoring the cost of capital is misleading and can lead to policies that devastate an industry already hurting. In the political version of this game, it's very easy to cheer when the landlord is the one taking the hit. But let's look at the actual evidence behind the 6.2% profit increase. That 6.2% is a blended average. It lumps together every building that has at least one rent-stabilized unit. That 6.2% number is being heavily padded by unregulated market rate apartments that happen to share a roof with a stabilized unit. It also includes commercial income from retail spaces and parking. If you want to know how the rent-stabilized housing stock is actually doing, you have to remove the market rate padding. When you look strictly at buildings that are 100% rent stabilized, that profit increase drops from 6.2% down to 2.4%. If you take inflation into account, landlords are actually doing worse than the previous year. What do you think?
I don't like paying taxes. What's right over there?
You don't like paying what?
Paying taxes.
Why? Even my son gets one of the fundamental realities of the game. Nobody likes paying taxes. But in the real world of New York City, real estate property taxes make up over 26% of buildings' operating costs. And we need to look closely at what else owners need to pay just to keep the doors open. The cost of labor has grown steadily by roughly 3 to 4.5% every year. But the real crisis is in insurance. The board's own data shows 5 straight years of massive double-digit spikes. In just 5 years, the cost to simply insure a building in the city has more than doubled. When your insurance premiums double that fast, a 2% rent bump doesn't even come close to covering the spread. And the Rent Guideline Board's own data proves this. When you take their numbers and adjust them for inflation, profits haven't spiked at all. Inflation-adjusted net operating income has stayed virtually flat since 2016. Since 2016, these buildings have aged nearly a decade. Roofs have deteriorated for another 10 years, elevators have 10 more years of wear and tear, the capital required to keep a building standing goes up exponentially as architecture ages, but the real inflation-adjusted cash flow to pay for those repairs and to service that newly expensive debt has been frozen for 8 years. The affordability crisis in the city is incredibly real. Nobody wants to see their rent go up, and it hurts when it does. The mayor is tapping into a very real anxiety. But if 100% stabilized buildings are only seeing 2.4% growth and the citywide average is 6.2%, where is that extra money coming from? It exposes a dirty secret of New York City housing. When the city artificially freezes stabilized rents below the actual rate of inflation, the building still has to pay the skyrocketing insurance, the soaring property taxes, and the union labor. So owners are forced to aggressively push the rents on unregulated units to cross-subsidize the frozen ones. The people paying the price for a rent freeze aren't billionaire developers. It's the young professionals, the middle-income families, and the new arrivals who are stuck paying $3,500 for a one-bedroom market-rate apartment just to keep the building's balance sheet afloat. Freezing rents doesn't solve the affordability crisis. It just shifts the massive financial burden entirely onto the backs of unregulated middle-class renters. The mayor started this conversation by using monopoly, so let's finish the game. In the political rhetoric right now, every single building owner is treated like a single monolithic villain. Everyone is just assumed to be the billionaire with the top hat and the monocle, but that isn't reality. Landlords in the city are all different tokens. You have institutional funds operating shiny glass towers in Park Place, but you also have legacy operators just trying to keep a 100-year-old brick walk-up on Baltic Avenue from falling apart. There are completely different types of businesses with completely different financial realities. And just like playing the game with your family, it can be incredibly frustrating when the rules are fixed and stacked up against you. When we treat all owners exactly the same, a flat rent freeze doesn't create fairness. It just acts exactly like drawing a terrible chance card. Imagine flipping over a card that says rent freeze enacted. If you own rent-stabilized housing, pay $200 and go directly to jail. If you own a market-rate luxury building, advance to go and collect $200. When we punish the exact people providing the stabilized housing stock we desperately need to preserve, the whole city eventually loses the game. The Rent Guideline Board is voting soon. Let me know in the comments if you think they'll vote based on the blended 6.2% headline or the physical reality on the ground. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah,
Do you like capitalism?
still no.
Why?